This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Greg Morton. It is Saturday, September 11th, 2021. This is the weekend video update for the Greenville Eastside IBD Meetup group, as well as the Stockyard Meetup group. As it is September 11th, of course, we'll never forget, but great to go listen to the IBD podcast this week, which dropped on Thursday as Kenny Polcari was the guest, former floor trader for O'Neill's companies. He was there. He was a floor trader. His office was in the World Trade Center, and he shares a pretty emotional recollection of that day and the time he left the building to go to breakfast, etc. So that's well worth listening to. Consumes most of that podcast episode. So take some time this weekend, go back through that. So as always, this weekend review is for educational purposes only. I'm not recommending stocks or securities to buy or sell, and we all know that all investing has substantial risk of big losses. So it's very important to learn first and only then invest. So this weekend, we're going to look at the MFactor, market review, and market direction. We're going to talk about this market starting to show some cracks. We'll do a couple chart reviews, and then I'll give you the details for our meeting, which is coming up in just a couple days on Tuesday, which will be a very detailed, extensive educational meeting. So with regard to the MFactor, this is the most important letter in Canslim. So O'Neill teaches that we're to look at three things in this order of priority: action of leading stocks, actions of stocks we own, the market pulse, distribution, day count, price and volume on the indexes. And so we're going to go over to MarketSmith. We'll look at also the coloring book as well as the group teaching portfolio. So let me exit this. Let's go to MarketSmith first. So here's the NASDAQ. You can see we finished the week with 3 days down, volume coming up on 2 of those days, lost the 10-day, did hold the 21-day exponential closing right above it, but just not very pretty action and some higher volume coming in than what we have been seeing. Go to the S&P 500. This looks worse. Closed under the 21-day, had 5 days down in a row after these days where it was hitting all-time closing highs, sort of barely, but it was still hitting them. And so this week, Monday was a holiday, so that was the prior Friday, and then 4 days we're all down, really poor low range closes, at least 3 of those 4 days. That one was only in the middle, so we're seeing some issues there. NYSE lost the 10, 21, and the 50-day, also had 4 days down in a row this week. Dow, 4 days down in a row this week and closed under the 50-day the last 2 of those, and the 10 and 21 are heading down. Russell closed under the 50-day, not constructive. And the S&P 600 also lost and closed under the 50-day, had 4 days down in a row also. So we're seeing some what looks like little broader weakness, and the leadership's been narrowing. We've been talking about that, and it just continues to seemingly narrow. So if we go to the Excel spreadsheet, that weakness I was just talking about is going to show up here. So this week we had, first of all, by the end of the week, the buy and selling day count just flipped to even, 10 buying days and 10 selling days, where we kind of had been holding green. We started the week with only the Dow was yellow on MMTS, and then the NYSE joined it, as well as the S&P 600. And then on Friday, everything got worse. S&P 500 flipped down to yellow, and then the NYSE, Dow, and the S&P 600 flipped to red. The Russell is the only reason it didn't turn yellow is because the 10-day moving average line is still barely up. As soon as it turns down, we have one more day, I think, that'll go to yellow, and if it drops a little bit more, it's already 0.8% below the 21 days. So if it goes 1% or more before the 21 day, it would actually flip to red. So None of that's looking good. Again, you got 2 distribution days here on the NASDAQ this week. You have 2 on the S&P 500. So we could get into a clustering situation, had several days of distribution, 3 in a row on the Dow. And as of Friday, the market school exposure dropped all the way from 5 to a 2, and the power trend went back under pressure after it had just barely come out of this long trend of being under pressure. So it just was not a pretty week, had a real bad day in the middle of the week. Let's go back, look at the group teaching portfolio, and we can see some of that. So here's the group teaching portfolio. Yeah, so really got whacked on Wednesday on that day right there, but actually recovered almost all of the whack, a good strong percentage of it the next day, and then more on Friday. But some of that's due to the fact we just had, particularly Docs has been a seriously well-performing stock, and even though we sold some into strength, still have a really big cushion and a really big gain on that one. So, but this was the really bad day. The group teaching portfolio were up 26% year to date, and had to sell some stuff this week. Couldn't hold Cook through earnings. Didn't have a cushion. Had a small loss. So barely have just used a little bit of margin, and that's fine. And we may have to sell some stuff, which would close that up. We'll see what happens and what sell rules are triggered. So we have 8.69 total positions. You can see what those are, and we can look at that further during the meeting on Tuesday. As I mentioned, it's been a very difficult year, and really we only now have a nice gain ahead of the NASDAQ and the Dow just in the last few weeks. And again, that was really helped by catching 1 or 2 stocks that are performing very well. AVTR is doing good. Dexcom's doing well. You know, there's a couple top ones in there are doing okay. Let's go back to the presentation to present. So right now, again, this weekend, just like last weekend, there's a lot of the growth stocks are extended. So that is good and that is bad. The good is the strongest of the leaders are mostly still working. The bad is this weekend there were 51 stocks in the Growth 250 RS New High list, and there was only one of those that was potentially actionable and made my first pass watch list to look at further. So, you know, again, just lots of extended stocks in there, lots of extended stocks in the newspaper. So that's the bad part. There's not a lot of actionable setups right now. We want to be very careful, not chase. We do not want to buy extended. And again, it's just been a tough market this year. Minervini said that. Stan Weinstein, oh, sorry, got a typo in there, said that. Kevin Martyr. Stan was on a podcast this week with Richard Moglin, so I'd recommend that to you also. So there's just a lot of very experienced investors on IBD Live or on the MarketSmith weekend wrap. Scott St. Clair said, you know, he's just not heavily invested right now. He's not seeing what he needs to see to really draw him in, and he's certainly not using any margin. So just a lot of very experienced investors noting this has been a tough year. Here's I snipped this out of the paper this weekend. Here's a fund. This one's actually doing good. There are not many in there each weekend that are actually outperforming the S&P 500. But interestingly, they recently have not made any new buys, i.e. not good setups for them, even though they're not buying on the Canslim system necessarily, nor have they been selling. This fund down here, this is more typical. So they're, you know, the S&P 500 is outperforming these fund managers by, 300%? So not good, triple, you know, just the plain index is doing better. And you can see they do have a lot of Canslim type growth stocks in here. So there's a lot of this in the paper, whereas last year, you know, this fund crushed. It was easy last year, you know, crushed the S&P 500. This fund also beat the S&P 500 last year. So it just kind of shows you that this year is different. So current thoughts need to be really, super disciplined with any offensive moves. Fundamental technical setup needs to be there. Entry needs to be correct. we've got to be very tuned into the MFactor. Last week was very concerning. There were a lot of weaknesses, and despite the fact that the group teaching portfolio had a good week, the growth stocks and the indexes really did not have a good week. So, and just seasonally, this would be an appropriate time for a correction. Not predicting, not saying it happens every year at this time, but September going into October is often weak. So it would just fit nicely. And then we have some events coming up. Oh, that was from last weekend. Sorry, those aren't the earnings for this week. Path reported and didn't do well. Delta COVID is ramping back up in our area. I talked to at least 2 doctors this past week, and they just were not seeing any slowdown. And one of those was at a hospital. So, and they were having to open additional spaces for COVID patients. We have the September Fed meeting coming. That's only going, it's going to start a week from Tuesday. And a lot of times that Tuesday all the way through the announcement on Wednesday just can be very hard days to trade. And then the next earnings season really won't ramp up till October 10th or so. Sometimes that's a catalyst to help move the market one way or the other. So maybe there's some positive catalysts in there. We'll have to see. So let's look at a couple charts. We'll go over to MarketSmith. Really didn't know what to put in here this weekend. Sometimes the best stock to own is the one you already own. So I have a couple in here from the group teaching portfolio, and let's look at weekly charts. So here's Dexcom. It continues to perform nicely because it is potentially a true market leader. I'm holding that one past the 20% profit goal. It's up just week after week after week. You have one down week in that whole run. Nice closes, not real wide, crazy weeks except the gap up, and then it consolidated that a little bit and it started moving. It'd be nice to see some better volume come in. AVTR, this one has been trending very nicely. Not necessarily a true market leader, but trying to hold it until I see some weakness and think that trend is breaking. Tech, this one's getting close to the profit goal, so some could be sold there, but it's still trending nicely. Good RS line. Zebra flattened out a little bit. This is probably the one that would qualify for the most to be sold when it hit the 20% profit goal. Maybe all or maybe a substantial portion and the rest shortly after that. Path, I just put this one in here. Don't own this one. This is one that Kathy Wood has been buying and buying and buying in the ARC funds all the way down. She has it in all 6 ARC funds. And then it reported earnings this week and just got uglier. In fact, it's all the way, this is the IPO price. It's all the way back down at the IPO price and looked like it undercut it. So that's an ugly one I put in there. And then I always like to put in 1 or 2 that are worth studying to see if they could be included in your watch list. So here's IQV. It's come out of a stage 2 base, but it's still in the buy zone, has Canslim numbers, has Fidelity Contra Fund in it, liquid, 185 million per day. And then this one's in the group teaching portfolio, sort of has an early entry here, 3 weeks tight. Canslim numbers, Fidelity Contra Funds in it, liquid, 137 million. So that could be one to study or one in the group teaching portfolio, may increase the position size. It's only, I believe, a 50% of a normal position size. So those are a couple of charts. Go back over here. So our monthly meetings, last month we covered, do you hold or not hold through earnings? What are some possible rules, considerations? How do you handle that to sort of avoid stepping on the pins and needles at earnings season? And so the September meeting, you can RSVP. If you're coming, please do RSVP at the Stockyard Meetup site. So just go to meetup.com and search for the Stockyard. We'll meet Tuesday, which is the 14th at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Meetings run 2 hours, sometimes a little bit longer with the Q&A. Everybody who registers can attend live. Whether or not you attend live or just attend part live, everybody gets the full recording as well as the slide deck, and I normally send those out the morning after we meet, so that would be Wednesday morning. Tuition is $10 for the meeting, and if you're a first timer, I send you a courtesy copy of the August meeting, which was on the EPS holding rules or potential holding rules, one rule set to consider or strategy to consider, and a copy of the slide deck from it. So here's the topic for Tuesday night. This will be a very intensive educational meeting. I like the way the presentation is coming together. I think it will be very helpful. This is updated and expanded from the last time I did it about a year ago. So we're going to talk about a complete weekend routine for Canslim investors, why even have a weekend routine and a watch list process. We'll give you 5 keys to success. We'll give you my personal key Canslim principles and biases that are built into my process, and these are built in on purpose. We're going to talk about the tools you need for a complete weekend routine, which is basically the Growth 250 in the newspaper. I'm going to show you how to walk through those and how I use them and in what order I do things. I'm going to explain how I handle the watch list and how I have a tiered system to try to filter things down to the absolute best of the best and just focus on the top 3, 4, or 5 stocks at the end of the weekend routine. And then we're actually going to do it. And we'll walk you through my notes and my process and the final tiered watch list that I had after this weekend. So that will all be on very current, current G250 and the newspaper. And then if we have time, which we probably won't, we may comment on the IPO market, the group teaching portfolio, if there's some questions on that. And then we will do Q&A at the end, but I suspect most of that will be related to the meeting. So here's a list of our prior meetings too. If you don't have a set of written sell rules, I think I say this every weekend, it's really important to have that. So these 3 meetings, if you're interested in getting those, I spent literally probably 5 or 6 hours of teaching on how to write your own set of sell rules and trading sort of in the 3 different zones on the MarketSmith chart. So I think those are very helpful. I think you need a written set of sell rules. It's very important. So those are available. I'll give you the contact information at the end. And so here it is, 2 meetup sites, Greenville East Side IBD Meetup site. Make sure you put East Side in there when you search for it, because there is a Greenville IBD Meetup site, which really isn't one of the official IBD sites, but that's another long story. And then the Stockyard Meetup site is the one I use for coordinating the online monthly meetings. So there's a lot of resources on the Greenville East Side site. Just go to the More, M-O-R-E tab, and then the message boards. And I've just uploaded Canslim resources over a couple years. So there's introductory videos, checklist, watch list, a lot of the group teaching portfolios linked there, the coloring books linked there, that sort of thing. If you have any specific questions, you can email me, or if you want to order prior meetings, just send me an email, say I'm interested, and I'll send you the list and the ordering instructions. You can follow me on Twitter, and then of course you're watching this video on my Stockyard YouTube page, so you can subscribe and like there. And if you haven't been to one of our meetings at all, I actually also have on that page uploaded the whole meeting from May of this year, if I remember the date correctly. And that was the educational topic there was on the I in Canslim. So I think that's it. Hope you guys have a great weekend routine. Look forward to seeing many of you Tuesday night. I think this will be a very helpful presentation. It will not be the only way to do it, but I think there will be some things in there based on the feedback I've gotten on the one I did a year ago that help people streamline their process, shorten it, and get to the best of the best. Because we're going to talk about how you compare one Canslim stock to another, and what is the best of the best. What are the key criteria that I look at? People may have different key criteria, I understand that, but I'm at least going to give you one set and be real forthright and open in all my thinking on that. So that's it. Look forward to seeing some of you Tuesday night. Again, have a great weekend.